You never learn more about your own country and culture than when you're abroad. At least that was very true for me. Many years ago, I've been an exchange student in France, in the UK, and in New Zealand. I also attended university in Granada, in Spain, for one semester. And together with my husband and a growing number of kids, I've also lived in Italy, near Monza, it's in the north of Italy, and then in the UK, near London, before we finally moved back to Germany, to Munich, nach München. As you can imagine, being an exchange student was still mainly fun and exciting. After all, I lived in families who were really nice and caring. But without the support of a host family who can answer any question you might have and who helps you along the way, moving abroad does get quite challenging and lonely in the beginning, even if you're with your spouse. Don't get me wrong, I would always do it the same way all over again. And sometimes I still dream of moving abroad again for a few years. But well, with the kids graduating from school one by one, timing is not ideal right now. Maybe in a few years, who knows? But when I came back to Germany, I felt that after going through these times of loneliness and feeling so overwhelmed with everything being new and different, I wanted to help others who went through the same when they come to Germany. I wanted to be like the host families I had as a teenager, someone newcomers can come to and ask any question they might have. This is something that I can do especially in my private classes, of course, and I also include as many tips in any of my other courses too. And today, I want to share 5 of the most important tips with you. 5 things that I experienced myself or that my students found helpful when they came to Germany. Hallo und willkommen. Hello and welcome to the Uplevel Your German podcast. Ich bin Charlotte. I'm Charlotte, founder of the language school CharLingua and host of this show. I help German learners around the world improve their German skills by building their confidence and fluency. It is my mission to make your language learning journey as easy as possible. So, the first tip is sort of reverse engineered from something I experienced in the UK. When we arrived there, my kids were 2 and 4 years old, and we were very lucky to get places in the local nursery straight away. Of course, I wanted to make friends or at least be friendly with everyone, and the nursery is usually a good place to meet other mums. So I remember arriving at the typically English red brick building for the first time. It was not far from our home, so we were walking. My son was sitting in his pram, and all of us were so excited. We entered the building, and for a moment it seemed perfect. I was greeted by a nice-looking mom with a cheerful, "How are you?" Or rather something like, "How are you?" I was about to smile and say, "Fine," when I realized that she was simply moving on, turning her back on me. And then the same happened with another mum. When I was walking back home that day, I felt like crying. Why were they being so unfriendly and, well, arrogant? So let's stop the story right here. Of course, they were not being unfriendly and arrogant. For them, asking, "How are you?" simply meant a completely different thing. For them, it was another way of saying hello. For Germans, wie geht's is a real question. So, a real question, what do I mean by that? Well, imagine your friend asking you what you're doing at the weekend or how you like her dress. And as you open your mouth to answer, she turns around and walks away. I hope you can see what I mean. I've seen the same story the other way around when we were back in Germany. There was an English mum in our nursery. She did say "Wie geht's?" instead of "How are you?" So she did make an effort. But instead of waiting for something like alles gut or just gut, she just walked on. Unfortunately for her, the other moms reacted in a similar way to how I did in the UK. Well, minus the being unhappy part. So, what does that mean for you? If you don't have time to chat, simply say Hallo or Guten Morgen or Guten Tag or whatever you feel like. Or you could ask Alles gut? With a voice going up at the end. Alles gut? Then the other person can say, Ja, alles gut, and you can rush on. Wie geht's is a sincere question that we take literally. So people may just answer gut, but they might also start telling you what's going on in their lives. So if the two of us would meet today and you say, Wie geht's? I might tell you that there must be a hole in our roof somewhere, and whenever it's raining heavily, the water's coming inside, running down the wall. If you ever heard that Germans are difficult to connect to, just ask a neighbor, a co-worker, or even a shop assistant, Wie geht's? And if they have time, they'll tell you about their lives and ask about yours. Another thing I had to learn was the different ways of expressing politeness. Germans don't say please as often as, for example, English people do. The reason is we can express a lot with the melody of our voice. If you listen to Germans, you may find that it sounds a bit, harsh, and also the voice is a lot more the same level. That's why we get to play the evil parts in Hollywood movies. But that also means that raising and lowering the voice can mean a lot more than in a language where everyone is singing anyway. So if we say, Kann ich das haben? Can I have that? Just with the voice going up or down at the end, it gets a very different meaning. Kann ich das haben? The voice stays the same. That's not very friendly, but also not very unfriendly. Kann ich das haben? Now it sounds a lot more friendly. So friendly that you do not necessarily need a please. And what happens if the voice goes down? No, down. The voice goes down. Kann ich das haben? Now it's more of a command. The deeper the voice goes at the end, the more it turns into a command. The bitte might even make it sound sharper instead of more polite. Kann ich das bitte haben? This is also important to know if you work in a company. The voice staying at the same level indicates an idea or suggestion. We must do that. Wir müssen das machen. Others might not take that very seriously. Aber, but, wir müssen das machen. That means you have to do it. Of course, there's no one going, oh, her voice went up, so she's being friendly. No, we perceive it in an unconscious way, so it creates a feeling that people have about you or what you say. So don't be offended by German rudeness. They may simply express things in a different way. Oh, and it might also be good to know that some Germans are a bit grumpy, especially in Bavaria. So it's nothing personal, they're just the way they are. Number 3, the German stare. I did hear and read so much about it, but somehow I must be too German really to notice it. So it is said that strangers stare at you. The only thing I can imagine is this. If people feel unsure whether they should say hello or not, they will look at you and wait for a reaction. Like when you're going for a walk and someone's coming towards you. What I always do is smile and say hello. Just hello and a smile, and that's it. Then they will also smile and also say hello. So if you should ever feel molested by a stare, and it's not some really weird and scary person, simply try this and let me know what the reaction was. You can always reach me on Instagram at Deutsch, Deutsch.CharLingua, and I would really love to know how that works out for you. That's @Deutsch.CharLingua on Instagram. Number 4. Die deutsche Pünktlichkeit, German punctuality. Back in 2015, you remember how thousands of refugees were coming to Europe. And of course, we also had many people from Syria, Afghanistan, and Iran living in our community. Like in most places, there were volunteers to help them have a better start in Germany. And for me, that was when I started teaching German. So, we were a group of volunteer German teachers and, of course, many elderly people among them. What really struck me was that the most important thing some of them wanted to teach these newcomers was not how to greet someone or where to buy food, but the importance of punctuality. Of course, Germans are sometimes late too, but most people feel very bad about it. Even kids expect their friends to arrive at the playground on time. So, if you're used to being 15 minutes late, you could try writing appointments 15 minutes earlier in your diary. Tip number 5. Learn some basic phrases even before you start a language class. Yes, most people do understand at least a bit of English, but they will connect to you in a different way. And many people will be very happy to continue the conversation in English. Most of my students find it quite hard to practice their German because Germans switch to English so quickly. But that's a different story. For the beginning it is, first impressions do count. And wouldn't you rather be perceived as someone who made an effort? I've prepared a cheat sheet with a bit more than 100 German words and phrases that will get you through your first days and weeks. You can download it if you go to charlingua.de/podcast. This is episode 44, or simply follow the link in the description. So, once more, all of the tips. Number 1. Wie geht's is a real question that needs to be answered. Number 2. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. Even if Germans don't use bitte, they can still be polite. Number 3. Don't freak out if someone stares at you. Just say hallo and smile. Number 4. Many Germans believe that punctuality is close to vital, so being on time is always a good idea. Number 5. Learn some basic words and phrases. If you have any questions about how things work in Germany or how to learn German, just drop me a message and I'll be happy to get back to you. Oh, and if you have any friends who just came to Germany, who want to come to Germany in the future, or who are learning German, please forward this episode. I really want to help as many newcomers and German learners as possible, so they won't go through the same loneliness as I did, but feel welcome and supported instead. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Uplevel Your German podcast, and I'll see you next week, same time, same place. Bye for now.